everyone to Thursday's edition of Cracking the Cryptic, where we should have something very special indeed for you today. The puzzle on screen is called The Butterfly Effect, and it's a collaboration between Abed Hawila and Mr.Menace, who individually are absolutely world-class constructors, but they've put their brains together, sort of Lennon and McCartney style, to create this puzzle. And we've already had 2 or 3 recommendations for it, one of which comes from Zatamath, who is himself an incredibly good constructor, and he says this might just be the best puzzle he's ever solved. So this is high praise, and I'm looking forward to giving this a go. It's also an equal sums lines puzzle, which is one of my favourite of the sort of new variants of Sudoku. And I'll read the rules out in just a second. My first job, though, today is to say a very, very happy birthday, happy 21st birthday, no less, to Ilse Goosens. It might be Hoosens, I'm not sure about how to pronounce the G there, but Ilse, I hope you have an absolutely brilliant day. Your friend Lenka got in touch with us and told us that it's a special day for you today, and we hope you have a splendid one, and of course, a very nice slice of cake. What else? What other news have I got for you today? Well, it's the end of the month. It is the end of the month. So, 2 things to mention in that regard. If you are still planning to get us an entry to the world's hardest classic Sudoku, which we published on Patreon by Philip Newman, it's called Palpatine's Design, then please do get that in by the end of play today, and you'll be in with a chance of a prize. Philip is creating a video talking us through the puzzle and explaining why he's chosen the prize winners, so that's something to look forward to over the coming days. Also, tomorrow it's the monthly reward, 1st of April. So we've got a new Sudoku hunt for you then, and that should be a little bit harder than the last couple of months. Not monstrous, mind you, we've got other monstrous things in mind, but yeah, it should be a little bit harder than the last 2 months Sudoku hunts. And the other thing we've got, of course, is this, which is the latest puzzle by the great Phistomefel. Now, I did have a go at this the other night. It took me 100 minutes to solve it, and I've just looked it up on Logic Masters Germany, actually. So I think it only had 9 solves altogether. And basically, whenever Phistomefel publishes a puzzle, because he's such an enormous name in puzzle creation now, I know loads of people will have had a go at this. So that only 9 people have solved it does suggest that my 100-minute time is not maybe, very slow. Because it's clearly going to be quite a difficult puzzle. But anyway, those of you who enjoy your longer videos, that is available on Patreon, or at least it will be once I've uploaded it to YouTube, which, because the video is so long and my Wi-Fi is not the best, it will take me a while, but it should be up there fairly soon. What else do I need to say? There was one other thing I wanted to mention. Oh yes, don't tell Mark what I'm about to tell you. But tomorrow is the 1st of April, April Fool's Day, and Demono let me in on, Demono has created a very interesting puzzle that I'm going to ask Mark to solve tomorrow as an April Fool. So yeah, check out Mark's video tomorrow night. I really hope I'm not sort of ruining things by, I'm hoping he'll be able to solve it so it will appear as a video, but if I tell you it's a 4x4, it's a 4x4. That's, we'll see how that goes. Anyway, let's get on with the butterfly effect. Here are the rules. Normal Sudoku rules apply. For each line, digits on the line have an equal sum n within each 3x3 box it passes through. If a line passes through the same box more than once, each individual segment of such a line within that box sums to n separately. Now, that is a very complicated way of saying something very simple, which is basically for each of these lines, these 4 digits, for example, you can see these 4 digits appear connected in box 2 before the line exits box 2. So those cells there, those 4 cells, sum to the same as these 2 cells, because these are the 2 cells of the line in box 5. And then the line re-enters box 2 again, and it finishes here. So those 3 cells there will also add up to the same number. So each one of these colours, the sum of the digits in each colour sum to the same number. Now we don't know what that number is, we'll have to work it out, and it'll be different across all the lines. So it's just, this rule is local to the lines, to each line. So that for this line here, those cells will have to equal, oh hang on, not those cells, that's a ricket. Those blue ones, you add those up and you'll get the same as those 5 cells in box 3. So that's how the rules work. Do have a go. The way to play, of course, is to click the link under the video as usual. Now I get to play. Let's get cracking. And I'm delighted to tell you today I can see the butterfly. Look, I can. This is the butterfly's body. And these squiggles are its wings. So, I mean, that's already outstanding setting from Abed and Mr.Menace, because normally I can't see the pictures that people draw in their puzzles. Right, the first thing I'm seeing is that those 2 cells have to be the same, because this digit here, or whatever it is, let's say it's a 7, then these 3 squares would have to add up to 7, and this would have to be a 7. So these 2 have to be the same because they're the only digits in their box. And the thing we can also tell, therefore, is that these have to be at least equal to 6, because the minimum I can put in 3 different cells in box 5 would be a 1, a 2 and a 3, and 1 plus 2 plus 3 is 6. So these have to be at least 6, and they have to be the same. And now what do we have to do? I don't know. I did notice something when I was doing the example there, though, that these 2 digits have to add up to those 5 digits. And 5 digits, 5 different digits, if we think about the triangular number for 5, it's 15. 1 plus 2 plus 3 plus 4 plus 5 is 15. So that means this domino adds up to at least 15. And therefore each cell within that domino must be at least a 6, because you can't put 5 and 10 into those 2 cells. That might be an opportune time to talk about symmetry here, actually. Yeah, that is quite interesting. So this line here is the same as this line here. Its geometry is identical, so we get the same effect there. Those 2 cells have to be also adding to 15 at least. But if you imagine that you were to fold this grid in half along the negative diagonal, you can see that almost everything maps to itself. These lines would map onto each other. This line would map onto this line. The 1 and the 3 are already on the diagonal, so they wouldn't shift around. And the only things I think that are breaking the symmetry and forcing this puzzle to have a unique solution are the 5 and the 4 don't. Obviously these are different numbers. But also this line here doesn't quite reflect onto that line there, does it? There's a little tiny break in the symmetry. So it's awfully symmetric, this. And sometimes, I mean, this is a technique I do sometimes use for solving puzzles. It's interesting to reflect that if you were setting this puzzle, you almost certainly start with the symmetrical parts of it. This, I suspect, has been added later to disambiguate some pattern that occurs towards the end of the grid. So we should be able, this is my theory at least, to do quite a lot with the symmetrical bits, because that's how, not that I could set a puzzle like this, but if I was going to try, I would like to make the first clues symmetrical at least. Now, what do we do now? We could say that 728. Right, I can say something about this domino, and therefore presumably this domino. That's the other thing about symmetrical puzzles, is wherever you find one bit of logic on one symmetrical piece, always make sure you apply it to the other symmetrical piece. Let's look at these 7 cells in box 2, because they are a tiny bit interesting. We know the triangular number for 7 is 28, so the minimum that these 7 cells add up to is 28, 1 plus 2 plus 3 plus 4 plus 5 plus 6 plus 7. But we also know that the total of all of these cells here is 2n. If for whatever n is on this line, this digit here, or the sum of these 2 digits, is equal to the sum of those digits and the sum of those digits. So given that this is adding up to at least 28, this domino is adding up to at least 14. And therefore it needs at least a 5. Oh, sorry, I could have done that there as well. 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. Right. And now this has become restricted because of the secret. Now the secret is something I only tell my very favourite people. But if you're watching this video, you're certainly amongst those people who deserve to know the secret. Some of you know this already, I know you do. But let's think about the secret in the context of box 2. Now, the secret also applies for any complete row or any complete column of the Sudoku, but obviously a complete box of the Sudoku will contain all of the digits from 1 to 9 once each. If you add up those digits, you'll get 45. 45 is odd. Last time I checked it was anyway. But we've just noted that these purple squares are even in total because we know that that lot there, this little L tetromino, adds up to the same as that triomino. So this can be expressed, the sum of the purple squares can be expressed as 2n, so it's even. Well, in order to make sure the box adds up to an odd number, that means that this total, the total of those two squares, is odd. And we know it's 15 or more, so it's either 15 or 17. And the same is true of that. That is 15 or 17. So now I'm thinking that these are going to be a 6, 7, 8, 9 quadruple, and they're both going to add up to 15. Now, how do we prove that? That would put 1s, 2s, 3s, 4s and 5s into each of these boxes. Okay, I'm not sure. Right, so now I'm stuck. How do we get unstuck? So each of these dominoes... Oh, I know what we can do. Right, so if this domino adds up to 15 or 17, and it does because we worked out it was the sum of the two digits is odd, then we actually know the exact values, or the two possible exact values of the purple squares. So the purple squares are either going to be adding up to 30 or 28, which means these two squares, which are adding up to half of the value of the total purple squares, are either adding up to 14 or 15. Ah. And that doesn't allow me to eliminate anything. Oh, you rotten thing. It doesn't, does it? I don't think it does. No, 14 could be 5. Could use the 5 in a 5, 9. Sorry. Okay, so what is it then that we have to understand about this puzzle? It's going to be... I'm not sure. I want to prove that these two digits are different from these two digits. Which I don't see how to do. Can you repeat on that line? That's another question. No. Right, okay. Right. Let us now turn our attention to geometry and think about those two digits there. Because these two digits here have to find a home in box 7. Now where is that home? And in particular, could either of these digits appear on the line in box 7? And the answer is no. Because if we try and make this an orange digit, that's implying that the sum of these two cells... Well, let's do an example. Let's say this is a 6 and this is a 6. Now we know that those 4 digits there have to add up to this digit in order to make the sums the same. And those 4 digits will add up to at least a triangular number for 4, well, plus 2 plus 3 plus 4, which is 10. And that definitely is not a digit I can put in that cell. So that does not work. So that means that this is not orange, and it means that we can ask where... So we get a domino. There is a domino of orangeness in box 7. Sorry, brief interruption there. That was Mark on the phone. But I was just about to get somewhere, because now I've got orange in these two cells, which means orange has to be in two of those three cells. And by symmetry, that means that it works the same way here, doesn't it? Those two digits can't repeat on the line. So these two digits, actually, let's just get rid of the purple. Those two digits have to go in those two squares. And that means these two digits have to go in two of those three squares. And that, hang on, that looks to me interesting. I've now got an awful lot of high digits in box 1, because these digits are always high. Yeah, so I've got to be a bit careful. I'm just thinking about the yellow digit, to be honest. I've got yellow, which is definitely a high digit. Oh, no, this is right. Right. So now I'm wrong about this being a 6, 7, 8, 9 quadruple, aren't I? Because if orange and blue were all different digits, they would occupy 4 of the 5 cells of that cross, because they couldn't overlap. And that would mean that within box 1 there would be 4 coloured digits that were orange and blue, and a 5th one that was yellow. And there can't be 5 digits in box 1 that are 6, 7, 8, 9 or higher, because that, well, 6, 7, 8 or 9, because that will mean you have to repeat one of those digits. So that tells us that there must be a repeated digit. Yes, I think that's telling us this cell has to be... Yes, because we cannot put orange and blue in 4 different cells of this 5-cell slice, because that breaks the box. We must put them in only 3 different cells of this cross. And the only way we can do that is if we overlap them in this position. So this cell here has to be simultaneously orange and blue, because there must be an overlapping digit between orange and blue. So that cell is a 6, 7, 8 or a 9. There must be an overlapping digit between orange and blue. So I suspect I'm meant to know what that digit is, and it's not. My brain is not telling me what it is, I'm afraid. There's an overlapping digit between orange and blue. So oh no, I do understand. That's right. That's really, really weird, but quite beautiful, actually. Yeah. Yeah, so the point is not that there is one overlapping digit. The point is that there is exactly one overlapping digit. Because if there were 2 overlapping digits, so let's say that this was 7, 8 and this was 7, 8. Well, that would require simultaneously this cell to be 7 and 8 in box 1, and there are no such things as Schrödinger cells in Sudoku, well, not in any normal Sudoku anyway. This cannot simultaneously be 7 and 8. So what that's telling us is that there is exactly one overlapping digit, which is quite interesting, because that means that, for example, let's imagine both of these were 15 sums. This is 15 and this 15. Well, we've got a real problem now. We've got a terminal problem, because we know these can't be 4 different digits because one of them has to overlap. But the moment one of them overlaps, because they both add up to 15, the other one will also overlap and create a Schrödinger cell. So these are not 2 15s. One of them is a 17. And then we run the same logic on what happens if these are both 17. Well, then they're both 8-9 pairs, and that has to be simultaneously an 8 and a 9, and that won't work. So one of these is a 17 and one of these is a 15. Which means one of these is a 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 quintuple, and the other one is adding up to 17, so it has to have a 1, 2, and I think a 3 on it. Yeah, because if it doesn't have a 3, it would add up to 18 minimum. So one of these is 17, one of these is 15. So now, so if that's 17, this would be 28, this would be 14. But in that case, this has to be 15. And this would be 30, so that would be 15. So this is... Right, so there is no 6 in these cells. That is absolutely beautiful. That is really ridiculously beautiful. It's so complicated and clever that I'm a bit stunned by it, to be honest. You've got... So the fact that the geometry forces these cells into a cross arrangement here forces an overlapping digit because of this. I mean, this is so clever. This digit here, that this has to be high, is what forces the overlap. And then once you've got the overlap forced, you can't have a double overlap. That forces these to be mutually exclusive in terms of total. That then allows us to run maths on boxes 2 and 4. So this box, let's say that this was the 17, this would be 28, that would be 14. That would force this to be 15, which forces those to be 30, which forces this to be 15. So the sum of this is 14 plus 15, which is 29. 29 in 4 cells only has one combination. 5, 7, 8, 9. So the one that's 14 now is forced. That has to be, yeah, and the one that's 15 is forced. So there is a 5-9 pair and a 7-8 pair disposed around these in these dominoes. Now probably we know... I've just had another thought. One of these, either blue or orange, is an 8-9 pair because it adds up to 17. Which means either this domino or this domino is an 8-9. They are looking at this. So this cell here has to not be 8-9 because it has an 8-9 looking at it. And we don't know where the 8-9 is. It's either there or there, but it's somewhere. So that's not 8 or 9. So now there must be a 1 and a 2 on this line. It's either 1, 2, 3 or 1, 2, 4. So the 6 in the central box is definitely not on the lead diagonal. That's not a 5, look. So if that's not a 5, that's not a 9. This is not a 4. And the weird thing is that how could we possibly know which way round this goes given the symmetry? That's the thing that is now in the back of my head. Well, it's come to the front of my head. It was in the back of my head. It's now coming to the bit where it gets enunciated because we know that ignoring the breaks in the symmetry, there is nothing there is it's all so symmetrical, all of this logic around here and here, that I don't see how we're going to know which way round this goes, which is a bit disconcerting. So that, yeah, because this is a really fatuous point, but I'm going to make it. Because one of these dominoes is an 8-9 pair, the digit that repeats must be an 8 or a 9, because we know there is a repeated digit, so that square is not a 6 or a 7, that's an 8 or a 9. I'm a bit flummoxed by this. I don't understand how I'm going to know which way round this goes, and I'm very sceptical that these breaks in the symmetry and the difference between this 4 and 5 are going to tell me how this all unravels at the top and the sides of the grid. That's really, really weird. I don't think these do anything, do they? This... is it? Unless you can say you can't put 9 on this line. No, you can't put 9 on that line there. Ah! Right, okay. That is a hard one. That cell... oh, this is gonna absolutely bust open the middle of the grid. This is beautiful again. This is really sensational setting. Look at this row and ask where 9 goes on it, because it's quite an interesting question. Can you put 9 on that line? Well, you can't, no, because if you do, in fact you can't put 8 on that line either, because if you put 9 here, what's the minimum value of the other cells on the line? Well, it'll be the triangular number for 4, which is 10. 1 plus 2 plus 3 plus 4 is 10. 10 plus 9 is 19, and you can't make a domino add to 19. So you can't put 9 there. Now, can you put 9 on these little things here? No, because then you're going to make their ends add up to 10 at least. So 9 is a hidden single in row 7 and can only go there. And look what this does. Now, this can't be the one that adds up to 14 in the middle box, as it sees a 9. So that's a 7 and an 8. This is now a 5 and a 9 in this order, which means that this is 14, which means that that's 14, that's 14. So these cells add up to 28, which means this has to be an 8-9 pair to add up to 17 to make 45. The 9 here tells us the order. That's a 9, that's an 8. So this is an 8-9 pair. And this is adding up to 15. And does that mean it's the same? Oh, actually no. Well, yes, it does add up to 15, but it's definitely not the same as that, but not for any reason I'm allowed to use to solve the puzzle, because I don't allow myself to use uniqueness. But if this was... see this 7-8 pair here. If this was, we know this domino adds up to 15 because it has to add up to 15 because this one adds up to 17. Now, if this one was a 7-8 pair, how would we determine the correct orientation of the 7s and the 8s in these dominoes in the finished puzzle? There would not be a way, because these sit, if you like, outside the rest of the puzzle now. We can't put more 7s and 8s into the puzzle to disambiguate these. So you would have two solutions. It's either that or it's that, and there's no logic about the puzzle that would tell us which was which. So we actually know at this point where we're headed. We know that this is going to be 6 and 9, but what we don't know is why, because we can't use uniqueness, or I can't. I don't use uniqueness to solve the puzzles. In a speed solving competition, I would absolutely use uniqueness because it's a way of shortcutting the logic, but I don't do it in cracking the cryptic videos. So I have to be able to detect what version of 15 this is some other way. Hang on a minute, sorry about this. 8 must be in one of those 3 cells. I can tell you there's a 9 in one of those 2 cells. Is that interesting? The answer is no. But there must be a 9 in one of these 2 cells because of where 8 has to go in row 7 now. So we've worked on where 9 went in row 7. Now let's think about where 8 goes. Well, 8's not on this line either, because this line would add up to at least 18, and I can't make that domino add up to 18. So 8 is on a line, but it's adding up to a single digit total. So there is one of these lines is an 8-1 line, and one of those 2 cells is a 9. Now this is getting horribly, cross-box pencil marked now. Right. Good grief. Right. Good grief. Okay, well this line is fast becoming the most impressive, line. This row is becoming fast the most impressive row in the history of Sudoku creation. Because now, this is just so stupidly clever. Right, where does 7 go in this line now? So I asked where 9 went in it, and I found out. I asked where 8 went in it, and I found out some interesting things without being able to place the 8 quite. Now I want to think about where 7 goes, and in particular, can I put 7 on this line over here? Let's think about that first. Let's try and put 7 there. Now what's the implication of that? The implication of that is that this domino adds up to at least 17, because 7 plus 1 plus 2 plus 3 plus 4 is 17. That's the minimum, and also the maximum I could put in this domino. But that's a problem, because if this is 8, 9 and this is 8, 9, that's become a Schrödinger cell again, and that won't work. So you can't put 7 on this line. And now look where you can't put 7 as well. You can't put 7 on one of these lines. Let me show you. If that's 1, 8 adding up to 9, whoops, and now I try and put 7 on this line, what am I going to accompany the 7 with? 1 is not available, and I have to get to a single digit total, so I have to put 2 on it, and now I've got repeated 9s in the column. That doesn't work. So you can't put 7 on the line along with knowing that one of the lines contains a 1, 8. Oh, hang on, let me just go back a bit. So we know that one of these lines is 1, 8. We know the other one doesn't have 7 on it. So the only place left for 7 is there, which means that's a 7, that's a 7. This line here is 1, 2, 4. These 2 squares are 3 and 6. That's frightening, isn't it? That is just frighteningly clever setting. It's just sort of, here comes the sun in Sudoku form. Now what does that mean, though? I don't know, do I? Or do I? Oh, hang on. Yes, I do know. That 7 is looking... Oh, my goodness. Yeah, this 7 is looking down here. We know that, right, we know that this domino adds up to 15. It doesn't have 7 in it. So that gets rid of it and plonks 6, 9 exactly where we need it to not have a uniqueness problem. So this is 6, 9, this is 6, 9. There's a 6 in one of those 2 cells. 9 is the repeated digit now, so that gets 9ified. So there's an 8 in one of those 2 cells. And then we come back to the line, and we come back to the row that giveth more than we possibly thought it could, because now we could ask where in that row 6 goes. And you can't put 6 on a line that adds up to 15. I think this was the thing I should have realised. The moment this line is adding up to 17, you can actually rule 9, 8, 7 and 6 off this line, because of course the other digits on the line will add up to at least 10. So once you realise that, we've got to populate these cells with the digits 6, 7, 8 and 9, and now we've got the 9 and the 7. We have to put the 6 on one of the lines. We can't put 1 with it because 1 has gone with the 8. We can't put 3 with it because that will make 9 and repeat, so we must put 2 with it. So these cells here are 1, 8 and 2, 6. This is an 8, 9 pair. This is just absolutely ridiculous. Now I'm stuck. Oh dear. Well, I know those digits now. They're 3, 4 and 5. Ah, so that's a 1, 2 pair because it's got to add up to 15, this line. So those are a 7, 8 pair. Ah, so that's not an 8. Whoops, so that's an 8. And we can get rid of that cell, is no longer bluified. Now, what does that mean? I don't quite know yet. Let me just think about this for a few moments at least. That cell is a 7 or an 8, using our old friend Sudoku. Never like to roll out the Sudoku too early in a puzzle, but this square's got to be a 7 or an 8, because 7, 8, 7, 8, there's got to be two of these 3 cells are a 7, 8, and if you put the 7, 8 there, knowing that we are adding up towards 15, this cell would have to be a 0, and that's just not right. So that cell has to be one of those high digits. Okay. So we've done amazingly well here. Actually, self-praise is no praise, but we've at least made progress, but we're still very much not finished. I am aware of this. I mean, maybe I've got to do loads of pencil marking now. These squares have got to be 2, 3, 4 or 5, because we've got this big quadruple in the column. That's not 5, because of this 5. No. 14 here. Oh, 7 in box 2 has to be in that domino. So these, well, 2 of these 3 cells have to add up to 7. But, oh, and we can't use 5, look. There's a 5 over there. So this is either 1, 6 or 3, 4, which I don't know if we can do anything with. 7 has to be up there. Aha, we can use maths, can't we? Yeah, that's beautiful. Let's use maths. So we know that those digits there add up to 17. We know these digits add up to 17. So these 7 cells add up to 34. The box adds to 45, so these add up to 11, and one of them is a 7. So they are 4 and 7, and there's a 4 here. So that's 4, that's 7. That's 4 by Sudoku. Oh, no. Well, I know there's a 4 in one of those 3. 7 is in one of these 3. Still no, it's still not rolling over and letting us tickle its tummy, is it? We're going to have to keep thinking. I've got a horrible feeling this is done by Sudoku now, and I just can't see why. That's not a 4. Ah, right, yeah, more beauty. Basically, in this puzzle, the way to do it is to do a whole load of magic in the top left, and then focus on the magical row, which is row 7, and just never leave row 7, because row 7 will just tell you all of the answers. So now, how on earth could this be an 8? Well, it can't be, because then you can't put an 8 in the row at all. Because if this is an 8, this is a 9, so this is a 1-8 pair, and that won't work. And not only that, if that's an 8, you can't put an 8 in that domino. So this square here is a 9, which means that's an 8, which means this is a 1-8 pair, which means that this is a 2-6 pair, which Ah, now that does actually do something. That 8 is looking down at this, so that's 8, that's 1, and that's 2 by Sudoku. Neither of those is now an 8, look. These squares have got to be 1, 5, and 8. I don't believe it. 1, 5, and 8. And I can see that one's not 5, but I'm not sure I can do better than that. This 9 is looking at that 6, 9 pair, so we'll take that though. 9 and 6. So there has to be a 6 in one of these two cells. This 8 is... Ah, look, we are getting some traction. That's an 8, 7 pair, which is resolved. Can we put 7 into this box? No, but I can put 8 into it. 8 by Sudoku goes into this square. And now I can put 7 into it. So the 8 and the 7 are placed in this box. That places 7 in box number 6. Now what do we do? 15. This is 7, so these two squares add up to 8. And that, right, okay, I can do that. Right, these two squares add up to 8 to make sure that this equal sum works. We've got a 7 here, so the 8 here has to be matched by those two. And we can't use 6, 2 or 1, 1, 7, so that's 3 and 5. So that's now a 6, that's now a 3. That gives me a 6 here by Sudoku. Oh, right, now hang on, we looked at this line before. We've got a 7 and a 6 on it, and we're adding up to 14, so we need a 1 on it. And the 1 has to go there. So 1, 7, 6 go into the grid. 6 comes out of that. Yeah, 1 and 4 in the middle box get finished. 1 has to find a home in that box, doesn't it? Doesn't it have to be here? This is not a 3, so this must be a 2, 4 pair. Oh, so now we've almost finished row 4 off. We need 6s in it, and we need 3s. Ah, 3 in it. So that's a 3, that's a 6, that's a 6, that's a 2. 6 goes here by Sudoku. It's its only cell that's available in box 3. I still haven't done this 8, 9 pair. Right, come on. How are we going to do this column? We need 1s, 2s and 5s. That's not a 1. That's not a 1. So this is a naked single. That's a 1. Well, a hidden single. This is a 2 or a 5. This is a 2 or a 5. That square is a 3, 4 or a 5, but that doesn't seem to be helping us overly much. Oh, look, why don't we do more Sudoku, more simple Sudoku? Let's just put the 9th digit into column 6 and see if that helps us. So these 3 squares have got to be 2, 3 and 7. Doesn't seem to be quite resolved. But I do feel like we're sort of on the home straight here. That's got to be a 2 or a 3. Probably famous last words. I am a bit disconcerted by the fact, oh no, hang on, that 6 is doing things. Right, so it is Sudoku. 6 and 9, and now that square's got to be a 1, which means that square's a 1, that's an 8, and that's a 5. Which means that's an 8, and that's a 7. And this had better be done. Yeah, 2, 2, 1, 3, 7. Nice. And that 2 has given me a 3 up here, which means those squares have got to be 2, 4 and 5, which means that's not 4. We don't know anything about that one, or apparently that one. We know those 2 are not 3s. Okay. Right, so now we need 2s, 5s and 9s over here. Ah, this 8 is finally getting me that 8, 9 resolution we were after. So that's 9. The 5 is sorting out the 5 and the 2. That's fixing a 2 at the top, a 5 here. What are those squares? They're 3 and 5, which is resolved. So 3 here, 5 here, this square ought to be something we can fill in. That's a 3, therefore that's a 3, that's a 5, that's a 4, that's a 4, that's a 2. So that's a 3, that's a 5, that's a 4, that's a 4, that's a 2, that's a 2, and that's a 5. And a flurry of activity at the end. Yay. Wow. Just wow. That's ridiculously clever, isn't it? Just ridiculously clever. I mean, stunning. It is stunning. Lennon and McCartney is not a bad analogy. Abed Hawila and Mr.Menace take a bow. How you have constructed this idea in the top left and then sort of compounded it with this row. This row is one of the most remarkable things I've ever seen in solving puzzles. It does so much work. I think I could have thought about it more clearly by realizing I couldn't put any high digit on this line. I just didn't appreciate that quickly enough, but it was quite good in a way that I didn't, because it allowed me to keep iterating downwards and going 9, 8, 7 and then 6 and understanding the effects on this row. Loved it, absolutely loved it. Let me know in the comments how you got on. I do enjoy reading the comments, especially when they're kind, and we'll be back later with another edition of Cracking the Cryptic.